Welcome to Truths from God, where we unpack scripture with clarity, context, and just the right amount of holy curiosity. Today's episode tackles one of the most quoted and most misunderstood verses in the entire Bible, Psalm 46 verse 10. You've probably seen it on coffee mugs, Pinterest boards, or inspirational posters with sunsets behind it. Be still and know that I am God. Sounds peaceful, right? But is that what it actually means? Is this verse telling us to sit quietly with our thoughts and breathe deeply? Or is something much bolder going on beneath the surface? In this video, we're going to dive into the theological and historical depth behind this famous line, not to ruin it, but to rescue it. We'll challenge popular interpretations and help you rediscover the strength, not softness, behind these ancient words. So buckle up, we're going to explore stillness, but not the kind that comes with spa music. Let's start by hearing the verse in full from the ESV translation. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. Right off the bat, this sounds majestic, and it is. But to really understand it, we need context. This verse comes from Psalm 46, a song attributed to the sons of Korah, a family of temple musicians who often wrote during times of national trauma. Scholars believe this particular psalm was composed during or after a military crisis, maybe a siege, maybe an invasion, but definitely not during a yoga retreat. The entire psalm is a declaration of God's power and protection when the world is falling apart. Earthquakes, roaring waters, collapsing kingdoms, the writers are painting a picture of chaos. And right in the middle of that noise, we get this powerful interruption, be still. But here's the key insight. This verse isn't just a comforting whisper. It's a climax. It's a thunderous declaration right at the peak of a spiritual battle. God is not saying, take a breath. He's saying, stand down. Recognize who's in charge. Watch me work. So before we turn it into a meditative mantra, we need to ask, who's actually speaking here? And who's being spoken to? Let's clear something up that gets overlooked way too often. God is the one speaking here, not the psalmist, not a narrator, not your devotional guide. This is the voice of the Almighty, cutting through the chaos like a commander halting a battlefield. Now, who is he speaking to? Most biblical scholars agree that God is not primarily talking to you and me in this moment of the text, at least, not directly. He's addressing the nations, likely Israel's enemies, or the hostile forces surrounding God's people. It's a divine ceasefire order, a cosmic drop your weapons. Think of it like this. When a king steps onto a battlefield, what do his enemies do? They stop fighting. They drop their swords. Because the presence of the king means the conflict is no longer on their terms. So be still isn't a gentle suggestion. It's a divine command to cease striving, to lay down arms, and to acknowledge God's supremacy. It's not whispering, it's authority. And that's a very different tone than we usually hear when this verse gets quoted in casual conversation. Alright, it's Hebrew time. Don't worry, we're not about to turn this into a seminary lecture. But the original language here is crucial if we want to understand what's really being said. Let's look at two Hebrew words from this verse, Rapha and Yada. First, be still comes from the Hebrew word Rapha. Now this doesn't mean sit quietly or enjoy the moment. It literally means to let go, to slacken, to cease striving. Picture a soldier unclenching their fists or dropping their sword. It's an image of surrender, not serenity. So no, God isn't inviting you to a spiritual spa day. He's calling for total surrender of control. Now let's look at the second part, and know that I am God. The word yada here means more than head knowledge. It's not know about me, it's know me through experience. It's intimate, relational, lived-in knowledge, like knowing the feel of a loved one's voice or the trust that grows in battle-tested faith. So when you put it together, God is saying, let go of your resistance. Step out of the way. Experience me, and not just in theory, but in action, as I show the world who I am. This verse is not about being quiet, it's about getting out of the way of the one who commands the nations. Now let's zoom out and look at the whole psalm, because structure always reveals strategy. Psalm 46 is brilliantly organized into three movements, like a symphony building toward a triumphant finale. Verses 1 through 3 paint a picture of natural chaos. The earth gives way, mountains crumble into the sea, waters roar and foam. It's like creation itself is unraveling. Instability, fear, catastrophe. Then suddenly, in verses 4 through 7, we get a shift. The scene moves to Jerusalem, described as the city of God. A river flows through it, symbolizing peace, provision, and divine presence. While the world shakes, the city stands, not because of its walls, but because God is within it. And then, in verses 8 through 11, we witness God's judgment on the earth. He makes wars cease. He breaks the bow. He burns the chariots. And it's right here, right in the middle of this divine disarmament, that we hear the command, "Be still, and know that I am God." It's not whispered from a mountaintop. It's thundered over the ruins of human pride. The psalm ends with a repeated line, "The Lord of hosts is with us." That's not a quiet comfort, it's a bold declaration of security in the God who reigns over chaos. Now, let's talk about what this verse doesn't mean. Misinterpretation number 1, over-spiritualized calm. We've all heard it, "Be still," used like a Christianized version of just relax. People quote it during yoga, quiet time, or when trying to fall asleep. But that strips the verse of its urgency and power. It's not about peace and quiet. It's about dropping your weapons in the presence of a sovereign king. Misinterpretation number 2, personalized trust. "Know that I am God" is often treated like a vague emotional boost, as if it just means, God's got this, so don't worry. But this isn't self-help, it's God help. It's not about your stress level, it's about His exaltation. Misinterpretation number 3, biblical reality gets replaced. When we turn this verse into a private mantra for peace, we lose the global, cosmic scope of what God is saying. Psalm 46 verse 10 isn't whispered in a moment of reflection, it's declared in the middle of international upheaval. So yes, God brings peace, but not by soothing us with gentle words. He brings peace by showing up and shutting everything else down. Alright, let's take a step even further back and zoom all the way out, like, divine perspective level. Because Psalm 46 verse 10 isn't just about Israel. It's not even just about one moment in history. This verse is a bold theological declaration about who rules the world. Let's break it down. First, divine authority. When God says, "I will be exalted among the nations, I will be exalted in the earth," He's not hoping for applause. He's making a promise. This is a royal proclamation. It's God saying, "No matter how chaotic things look, I will be glorified. My name will rise above every nation, every king, every crisis." That's not just comforting, that's sovereign power. Second, there's an eschatological theme here. Yeah, big word, I know, but it basically means end times. This verse hints at something beyond the immediate moment, a picture of God reigning fully over a subdued earth. The kind of moment when every knee bows, whether willingly or not. It's a flash forward to the day when resistance ends and God's rule is universally known. And third, the Christological link. Some theologians point to this verse as a shadow, a glimpse, of Jesus' return. When Christ comes again, He doesn't ask for permission. He reigns. This exaltation, this global recognition of God's glory, fits hand in glove with the second coming, where Jesus doesn't come quietly, but in power and majesty. So Psalm 46 verse 10 isn't just devotional. It's prophetic. It doesn't just speak to our hearts, it declares what's coming for the entire world. Okay, so what do we do with all of this? How does a verse about surrender on a cosmic battlefield apply to you here with your schoolwork, your bills, your relationships, your late-night anxiety? Here's how. First, are you striving? That's the piercing question behind this verse. Are you fighting battles that God never asked you to fight? Are you clenching your fists, trying to control outcomes, forcing solutions, or running yourself ragged trying to play the role of savior? Psalm 46 verse 10 isn't asking you to be quiet, it's asking you to lay it down. Second, trust the commander. This verse calls you to step back, not because you're weak, but because you're not him. It's not about passivity, it's about trust. You don't need to have the final say. You don't need to win every fight. You need to recognize who's actually in command. And finally, true stillness comes not from escaping, but from surrendering. This isn't about avoiding problems or shutting your eyes and humming at him. It's about boldly choosing to stop fighting and let God lead, even when the world is still shaking. Because faith doesn't always look like movement. Sometimes it looks like standing down and standing firm, knowing that He will be exalted. Now it's your turn. Let's take this from head knowledge to heart application. Reflection question 1. What battles must I lay down? We all have them. Maybe it's a relationship you keep trying to fix on your own. Maybe it's fear about the future. Maybe it's a need to control outcomes that only God can orchestrate. Ask yourself, what weapons am I still gripping when God's asking me to drop them? Reflection question 2. Am I resisting God's rule? That's a tough one, because sometimes resistance doesn't look like open rebellion. It looks like pride, or fear, or even spiritual busyness. Where in your life are you doing everything but trusting? And reflection question 3. Do I trust God's exaltation? In other words, do you really believe that God will be glorified, even without your help? Can you trust that His plan will unfold, even when your plans fall apart? Psalm 46 verse 10 isn't just a verse to quote, it's a mirror to look into. It's a challenge to step out of the spotlight and say, God, you are the one who gets exalted, not me. So now what? Let's end with some practical steps that take this from theology to to transformation. First, the memory challenge. Try this for the next 7 days. Meditate on Psalm 46 verse 10. Recite it each morning. Let it interrupt your overthinking. Let it settle your striving when the urge to control creeps in. Second, the prayer prompt. Here's one to start with. Lord, help me stop striving. Help me trust that you are God, even when the world feels out of control. Help me surrender instead of scramble. Simple, honest, and powerful. And finally, the call to action. If this message resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. You never know who's stuck in a season of striving, waiting for someone to point them back to God's sovereignty. And before you go, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss future teachings like this. Check out our other videos if you want to keep learning. And if you want even more bite-sized wisdom, follow us on TikTok and Instagram at the links in the description. This is Truth from God, reminding you that stillness isn't about silence. It's about surrender. See you next time.